everybody. Welcome. It is Sports Wrap tonight. Yes, Sports Wrap. Originally in Detroit, Georgia. I have a history with this name back in Detroit. And there's no
Yes,
better way
yes.
than bring a Detroiter on here. Detroiter, Ann Arbor, call them whatever you want. Our old pal, Ken Cal. How do you like that for an intro? Old pal, Ken Cal. Or, of course, young pal, Ken Cal. I don't know. He doesn't have the beard I do, so who's old and who's young? I don't know. That's the difference. Ken, welcome to Sports Wrap. Glad to have you tonight.
Well, it's always a pleasure being on your show, and it's been a long time, couple of years, I think, since I seen you in South Florida there, Scott and George. I always see you all the time up here in Michigan, so I
Yep.
feel like this is a good way to, I guess, go into the fall season. We're almost there, and talk a little hockey tonight.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to Sunrise. I've really been limiting my activity. Here's the thing that I have end up doing now, Dan. I'm the publisher of the South Florida Tribune down here. So I have a broadcasting division that I've built from the ground up and also have to work on the publishing side to make sure we line up the media distribution partners. So a lot of my games are really limited to the weekends and I only go where I can go. So it's not like I can be a sports writer every day. I can go 5 to 7 days. It just doesn't work that way anymore. Good evening, Eddie Prater. Glad to have you on. He's one of our regulars in the chat room. Glad that they can join us tonight. So my responsibilities kind of really different, and it'd be different if I could just go out there and just do a broadcast or do writing. But it's when you own a business like this and you have to network and do all kinds of things, and now I have a book out there that I'm trying to market. It's a different animal. When I get a chance to see you, Paul Woods, and the rest of the gang, whether it's in Sunrise or it's in Tampa, it's always to me like a nice little reunion. And the Red Wings have always treated me well, and I'll always be Red Wings first. Sorry for those of you fans that are local, but I'm Red Wings first, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Not that I have any local allegiances, but when you're in Florida, you're a transplant, and that just simply does not go away. And it hasn't in the case here. So, anyways, let's get to the agenda. We have a lot to cover tonight, Ken. But boy, you couldn't have come on in a better week. Sergei Fedorov talks about the Wings and the Red Wings rebuild, and he's rebuilt this relationship to a point that now his number 91 is going to be retired on January 12th with the Wings. And here's the thing against Carolina, wasn't that one of the teams I think he went to after he left with the Red Wings? But when you talk about his stats, you're talking about a one-time Hart Trophy winner, two-time Selke Trophy, a one-time Ted Lindsay Trophy, and of course, three-time Stanley Cup. And then we'll even add to the fact that he's the NHL's fastest skater 92 to 94 and the hardest shot in 2002. Why did it take so long, Ken, to get to Sergei Fedorov, where we finally are seeing his number retired?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that, Scott and George, but I
Yeah.
will say this. When you look at the top, say, 20 Detroit Red Wings of all time, I think he's in the top 5 or 6. And, my top 5 or 6 Red Wings are Gordie Howe, number 1, Yzerman, number 2, Sawchuk, number 3. Then I'd have to go with either Delvecchio or Fedorov or even Ted Lindsay. And those kind of rounded out, and even Nick Lidstrom right up there too as an all-time great. But it's been a long time coming, and I think it's about time that that this is going to happen. It's the greatest honor in the world for a player to have his number retired. And I know one thing about Sergei, just in dealing with him for 4 or 5 years that he was around when I first started broadcasting Red Wing games, is he always loved Detroit. He loved the fact that management went out of their way to bring him over from Russia. It was kind of like a spy novel when they brought him over here. A lot of secret innuendo type things going on. And, back then it was hard to get Russian players over, and it worked. And one thing Sergei always talked about is he loved the fans in Detroit. And I think the fans really loved the way he played. He was a gifted player, highly skilled. And as you mentioned, he not only was a Hart Trophy winner, but he was good defensively too, and, won the Selke Trophy. So a great two-way player. And he was one of the very few guys, when I was calling a game and the fans at the Joe were right in front of us, when he'd take that puck down the wing or right through center ice, the fans actually stood up to see what he was going to do. And very few players I can remember could ever do that. So good for Sergei, and I know he's thrilled about it. I know Chris Ilitch called him, I believe it was on Monday, and gave him the news, and he was all excited, and it'll be good to see Sergei in town.
All right, let's have a little fun with this one. You're covering the Stanley Cup. You have practically no voice. You barely made it to the end. And wasn't it Daniels that was with you when you did that? How did you pull off that last few seconds?
Well, actually, I think Daniels was in Detroit, and they had to fly him in because at that particular time there was no television, local TV.
Right.
It was all network, and so Daniels, I don't think was in Pittsburgh. They had to call him in, and I just remember waking up in the morning, Game
Mhm.
6 in Pittsburgh in 2008, and I couldn't talk, and don't know what happened. But so I'm trying to talk as best as I could to our program director, Jimmy Powers, over at the station. Gave him a call, and so he called Jeff Rieger. Rieger flew in, and I think they called Daniels up, and Daniels came in, and he did it. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a strange situation, but the way it all worked out, Daniels gave me the microphone at the last 15
Right.
seconds, and him and I were actually in a little bit of a shouting match.
Really?
Because Paul was talking, there's about 25 seconds to go, and Paul's explaining something while the play's going on, and Daniels is yelling to me because I was next to Paul, and he's going,
Right.
"You're doing the last 15 seconds." And I'm like going, "No, I'm not." Like, I don't know how much voice I had left or anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
So then when he
Yeah.
through it to me, I'm just praying that I can get through. And
Yeah.
once you know it, it was such an exciting play at the end. I'm glad that Pittsburgh didn't score, but yeah, it's a moment that I'll always remember.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
I watch it. I always say something. I cringe when I listen to it on YouTube. I'll bet you probably got 20 or 30 views with me just watching it all the time because of you. I mean, name a broadcaster or whatever you want to call us these days who doesn't have a throat issue. I averted, by the way, throat surgery last week when they said my right vocal cord is straight, has problems, but I had another opinion that said I had two voice nodules that were close. They'd have to do some surgery. I got the second opinion that did not say no, that wasn't the case, and I have to work through therapy. But name a person that doesn't have to deal with it when you have. So I liken a weak vocal cord to like brake pads. At some point, these darn things are going to wear out. I mean, and that's exactly
sure.
how I look at it.
Yeah.
So, but I tell you,
Yeah.
probably got 30 or 40 views on YouTube with me watching that incredible finale with you, and I enjoy it. And I guess I enjoy it more because I know you were good friends, anyways. So I had to get that early in. Well, I don't forget it. Unbelievable
Well,
stuff.
and that other game, remember when you brought Bruce Martin back
Well,
on
we're
the
going to get
flip side. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll
we're
get to
going
that
to
later.
get to
Okay.
that. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
but that's
We'll
okay.
hold that till later. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I restrained him a little bit with Tom Gage last week, so we want to make sure he gets old. The reason why I did though is I had so much I had to get done with Tommy from a baseball standpoint, but this time I promised to give George a lot more leash with this situation. George knows what I'm talking about. Well,
Yeah.
again, I'm compiling information too, though, Ken, for my next book as well. So all the interviews I'm putting in between now and December 31 are getting recorded, and I'm compiling a list to complement what I did on the first run. All right, so let's talk about the new tenant that's going to be in the Little Caesars Arena. Detroit's going to be getting a WNBA expansion team in 2029. A lot of people certainly love to see the Detroit Shock, but that's unknown. But Tom Kors calls it a win for Detroit. What are your thoughts about Detroit getting a WNBA team?
Well, I don't know much about it other than the fact that the more the merrier. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
And it's more opportunity for fans in Detroit to get more sports. And I don't think it's watered down at all. And I remember the Detroit Shock. I think Bill Lambier, George, wasn't he the head coach?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they actually won a championship. And I just remember that I think it was played at Joe Louis, and it was just a big crowd over there. And it was something to behold. So I think when you look at the WNBA, I mean, it's really taken off right now with Caitlin Clark and some of the other All-Stars.
Right.
And,
sure.
fans here would want to see her as well. So I think it's great.
Yeah. Nancy Lieberman, I think, was the first coach. Yeah. Nancy Lieberman.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
If my memory serves me correctly, George, I'm sorry, I need your help, man. Wasn't it at the Palace? I
think so. Most of the games, Kenny and Scott, were at the Palace. Bill Davidson owned the team. Tom Wilson helped run it, as you know, and then he later worked for the Red Wings. But yeah, most of the things were in the Palace. But they had to play some games a lot of times, and they did come to Joe Louis. I remember there in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, no, again, there's obviously a conflict in terms of the dates. That's probably why they made their way down to Joe Louis in the first place. I was just curious, but yeah, it's a good story to see the WNBA. It's a league that's growing for sure. the women are putting on a good show, and obviously that's why they're expanding in the manner. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I
Yeah.
figured since you're getting another tenant at Little Caesars Arena, which obviously lured the Pistons, why not snap up a WNBA team to go with it? That's why I thought we'd bring it on tonight's edition. Change it up a little bit for you too, Ken. Get you doing other stuff outside of hockey. Well, we're going to continue changing it up back to your old stomping grounds, the University of Michigan, where Michigan is the first school, Ken, get this, to have first round picks in the NFL, the MLB, NHL, and NBA in the same year. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so get this. I'm going to read off the list. Mason Graham was the fifth one, went to Cleveland. Colson Loveland, 10th overall, went to Chicago. Kenneth Grant, 13, went to the Miami Dolphins. Danny Wolf, 27, went to the Brooklyn Nets. William Horcroft, 24, to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Mitch Wolf went to the New York Mets. How do you like that? The Wolverines here, I mean, you're talking about the four major sports all in the first round. That's why I thought this would be a nice change of pace for a former Michigan guy like you. Few people realize that Cal started with the Michigan Wolverines hockey team before you made your ascension to the Red Wings. You kind of took the Chris Fetters route, right? I mean, Chris Fetters goes from the Wolverines as a pitching coach all the way to the Tigers, and you took the same route, but in a different way. But what are your thoughts about the versatility and the programming of all these athletes making it?
Well, the program has really grown. And my first year back in 1984 was Red Berenson's first year as the head coach. And actually, the program, they were in the WCHA and then they went into the CCHA. And there was even talk that if they couldn't get Red as the coach, that they would just turn into a club team. And they weren't very good. I don't think there was a lot of hockey interest at the time at Michigan. So they brought in Red, and little by little, he changed it around. And by the time I went to the Red Wings, they were ready to win a national championship. So I kind of saw it didn't change overnight, but I saw them start to recruit some really good players like Denny Felsner back in the day, and then David Roberts, and then Marty Turco, and the list goes. Steve Shields, Brian Wiseman, David Oliver. So they got better and better. And once you know it, my first year that I'm with the Red Wings, they win the national championship, So I went down to see them in Cincinnati, I think it was. We had an off day, and I actually watched them win. Brendan Morrison, I think, had the game-winning goal in overtime. So, yeah. And look at, Dylan Larkin. Like, look at all the Michigan players that, on the Red Wings right now, Kopp played there, and Comfort played there. And, as we mentioned, Dylan Larkin. So there's a lot of players that not only play at Michigan, but also at Michigan State, too. So Michigan's a hockey hotbed up here.
Oh, sure. I like the way they snap up those local players. Let's face the reality. I mean, I wish the Lions would grab more Wolverines than they do, because I remember back in the original USFL, they used to have the territorial draft, and the Panthers did well with some of the local teams they had between Michigan State, as well as some of the other ones nearby. But that's a good point, Ken. It really, really is. So, but I'm glad to see the Wolverines are able to get draft picks in all the four major sports. I think that's the thing that's pretty impressive about the program and its mentality. We're not even talking about Michigan football tonight. I don't really care because we have so much hockey stuff I want to cover tonight. All right, we talked about Bruce Martin before. So this is a two-part question. George, I know you were alluding to it, and we're going to get to it now any second. But first of all, what was it like following Bruce Martin afterwards? Obviously an icon in the area. When I was looking at idols as a kid, my late Aunt Tina, God love her, rest in peace, inspired me to get in this business as a broadcaster. So I would hang out with her and her boyfriend over in Detroit, turn down the volume and do the Red Wings game. And I would emulate Bruce Martin. I love his calls. So, and I actually met him a few times. He's not bad. I don't know what kind of a person he is in general, but he's nice to me a few times. But what was it like following Bruce Martin?
Well, it was interesting because, to be honest with you, when I applied for the position, I really didn't believe I had a chance to get it. I only did college radio. I was never doing the American League or anything like that, any professional league. And I just thought that, they're going to hire somebody with a lot of experience. Why not the Original Six Club and whatever? But, I applied, I sent my tape in, they looked at it. And I think what really helped me out was that at the time they did a lot of college hockey games at the Joe. They did the Great Lakes
Oh, yeah.
Invitational.
Yeah.
They had CCHA championships there every now and then. The NCAA would have the tournament there. And so I think they really liked the fact that I could relate to the college hockey crowd, and that would really help me as well as the Red Wings too. So I think I got a little bit of a break in that regard, and was fortunate to get it. But Bruce Martin, to me, I put him right up there with Ernie Harwell, and I always loved baseball, and I always loved hockey, and Bud Lynch too, for that matter. You ain't gonna get a nicer guy than Bud Lynch was, and I grew up listening to Bruce, and he was a legend. And to be honest with you, I was a little scared because we all remember what happened when Ernie Harwell was fired, and Riz and Rath came in, and it was not very good, right? So the situation was a little bit different because Bruce retired, wasn't where he was fired or anything like that, and I got in, and I think what really helped me out is the fact that the team was really good. They won 62 games in my first year. It didn't win the cup, but man, they won every night, and it's different when you come in, the team's losing, because then the fans they want to pick at the announcer or anything that they can because of the frustration if you have a losing team. So I've seen that happen before, but no, luckily for me, everything worked out well. And Bruce is a great guy, and I still talk to him. As a matter of fact, I just emailed him, and he emailed me 2 weeks ago, and we kind of shared what was going on. And the thing about Bruce right now, and him and his wife Donna are still together. They're still living. They're celebrating their 75th wedding anniversary coming up.
Wow.
75 years, and that's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Where do they live? Are they in North Carolina or Florida still?
No, they were in Florida. Then they moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they're close to his son who lives right by him. So
that's good. Yeah.
Well, Winston-Salem, I've been there many times. I didn't know that. I knew he was in Florida, but now he went up to Winston-Salem. I don't know if I'll ever get up there again, but I do business up there every once in a while. But he's in Winston-Salem. I thought he was in. I'm trying to remember, somewhere out in Venice, I think is where he was, out in that area before.
Oh yeah, we're in Florida where he lived. Yeah.
Right, but now he's in Winston-Salem. It's good to know. So, all right. So let's talk about that Bruce Martin call at the end. He went through a lot of the tough times, but you decided, well, let's give him the mic and have Bruce have a little bit of glory, because he didn't have a whole lot of hallelujah when he was doing it before.
Well, the thing about that, what I remember is we had a really good first 3 rounds of the playoffs. Then we got to the Stanley Cup final, and actually the Red Wings were the underdogs, and everyone was picking the Philadelphia Flyers to win that series. And I remember bringing it up. I said, hey, it'd be great if we asked Bruce Martin if he wanted to come back, because Bruce called, I think, 3 or 4 Stanley Cup finals, but never called a championship. They lost each and every one of them, and after wins in Philly, games 1 and 2, I said, we're not gonna lose. We're gonna win eventually. I don't know how many games it's gonna take, but we're gonna win. Then we win game 3, and when we got back to Detroit, that's when I made the call, and the Wings talked to him too, and I was glad that he came back. And wouldn't you know it, I mean, how things work out, he calls the second period, and Darren McCarty scored that beautiful goal, and it proved to be the cup-winning goal. And the reason why it was the cup-winning goal is because Eric Lindros scored with like 16 seconds left, and so that made McCarty's goal the game cup-winning goal, right? So Bruce, out of all the years, then he came back, does 1 game, 1 period, and he calls a cup-winning goal. So good for him.
Yeah, it's another one I watch on YouTube a lot too, between your call with no voice and his with McCarty. My YouTube channel, my YouTube gets a lot of work that way, and of course I have a YouTube channel where we are growing it pretty well. We're actually over 600,000 views right now as it stands at the moment, and growing. So it's something that's why you don't see me at games. I'm so busy working to try to get it to 1 million while I still have the gusto to do it. We're working. I have a good supporting cast behind me to do it.
Just real quick here, sure. Scott and George, is one of my all-time favorite things as a Red Wing announcer. I'm moving into my 30th year this year, was being able to call a game with Bruce Martin. And it was always like, I always wanted to call a game with Ernie Harwell, but because I was in hockey, I always wanted to work at least 1 game with Bruce Martin, and I finally got a chance to do it. That was the only chance I had, but it turned out to be a great memory.
Yeah, did it?
Sure.
How did he like working with you?
Well, he worked with actually him and Paul took over. I gave him the microphone, and him and Paul took over like they did for 10 years. And I was just in the
Yeah.
background and I was listening. And then what was really nice is after we won the cup and they were doing the celebrations on the ice, all three of us came on together and we were just reminiscing about the season and the cup and everything else. And
Sure.
it was just a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah, that was great time.
That's one thing I
Great
love.
timing. Yeah.
That's why I love wearing this wing wheel. You got to go out there, and if any Red Wings ever see this, and let them know that they're in my blood, and I'm wearing this shirt tonight with you guys. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I'm hoping my health will allow me to get back up there, and that's what we're striving toward. All right, let's change gears a little bit right now to the current Red Wings. The Red Wings have signed a 13th overall pick in 2025 NHL entry draft Carter Bear to a 3-year entry level deal. He's like 18 years of age. The kid's got he's got 40 goals, 82 points in 56 games with the Everett Silver Tips of the WHL last season. What do you know about this kid?
Well, I wanted to really see him at development camp, and the Red Wings held a development camp 2 days or 3 days after the draft. And that's when we get our first look usually at some of the young players that the Red Wings drafted. The problem is he's coming off an injury and they really didn't skate him too hard. And we were supposed to have a 4-on-4 game at the end of the development camp. And they had so many guys that were banged up and pulled muscles and everything that they decided they're not going to have a 4-on-4 game. But what I can tell you is that, this kid has a playoff mentality. I mean, he's a guy that really loves having the puck and likes to make things happen with it. He goes to the net hard. It's hard to say now because when you get to the National Hockey League, it's a whole different ball game. You've got bigger, stronger men, and it's hard to go to the front of the net. But if you have that, like Marco Casper to me has that type of talent, and if you have that mentality that you can go to the net, and you're not afraid, it's only going to help you out. He's got the ability to score, and that's something I think down the road the Red Wings are going to need. So if he turns out, and let's face it, he's a good 3 or 4 years away, but he could be a diamond in the rough right there, and I think down the road he'll be a good player for Detroit.
Well, let's talk about the Red Wings' current composition of the roster as it stands out. I'll give you the update that I have right now. John Gibson is in because of a trade. 2025 4th-round pick. They obviously have added by a trade. 2026 4th-round pick in with a trade. 2026 7th-round pick by a trade. Then they get James Van Riemsdyk, Mason Appleton, Jacob Bernard, Patrick Kane obviously was re-signed, which I think was huge. Elmer Soderblom re-signed. Jonathan Berggren re-signed. Albert Johansson re-signed. And then out, you have Vlad Tarasenko goes to Minnesota. Peter Mrazek got flipped over to Anaheim. Jeff Petrie goes to Florida. Of course, he's a bargain basement for them anyways. And then they shipped out a bunch of draft choices, 26, 27, 25, and 24. They have 4th, 2nd, 7th, and 3rd round compensation. How would you rate the Red Wings offseason so far based on what I've told you here?
Well, they added some depth, and I think they have an upgrade in goal with John Gibson. And he's been battling injuries too over the last several years. He wasn't playing with a very good team in Anaheim, so obviously his numbers weren't going to be that great. But right. I always liked him as a goalie, and I think Talbot last year won over 20 games, and we'll see what Gibson can do. But there's a couple of areas that I think the Red Wings need to improve. One of them is the penalty kill, and they were dead last in the league in penalty kill last year. And your penalty, you can't give up those power play goals. If you look at it, the Red Wings were the 3rd or 4th best power play team, but they were the worst penalty kill team. So those numbers kind of equal out, and you're not going to move up because of that. But if they can get their penalty kill up to 14, 15 this year, that's going to be a big improvement, and it helps the overall success of the team. The other thing is Todd McClellan wants them to work on their game management. And I'll give you an example. Okay. There were several games last year where the Wings had a 2-goal lead, 1 or 2 goal lead in the 3rd period. They end up losing the game or going into overtime and losing and getting a point. What Todd McClellan's trying to teach them is, or get them to buy in, is like, look, we got a 2-goal lead. we don't need to score anymore. We don't need to take chances. All you got to do is shut down your opponent. So don't protect the puck. Don't take chances with it. And when they start learning that and how to play the game when they have the lead, things are going to get a lot better and they'll win more hockey games. So those are two areas I think that really needs to improve, and I think it will under Todd McClellan.
What's it like to work with Todd McClellan? Do you like him?
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I remember him being here when we won the Cup back in 2008, and he was a big part of that team with Mike Babcock, and we always knew that he was going to be a terrific coach. So he went to San Jose, a couple of years there. He won over 50 games, and I think he's going to have a lot of success here in Detroit. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He really knows the game, and we saw a little bit of what he can do. This team was going nowhere around Christmas time last year.
Right.
And twice they had 7-game win streaks under Todd. So he's got that ability to get the players to play the way he wants them to play. And if he can do that, they'll win more hockey games.
Sebastian Cossa, at some point or another, we're going to either see this guy in a Red Wings uniform as a starter, or we're going to see him somewhere else. Where do you think he's at in his development at the moment? And do you think it's about time that at some point, we are going to see him in Detroit full-time or somewhere else?
Well, because we didn't see him last year, that kind of tells me he still isn't ready, right? I mean,
right.
All the fans want to do bring him up, play him, but that's not how Steve Yzerman works. So you got to earn your spot on the team. And last year they felt that his game just wasn't ready for the NHL. And the last thing you want is to bring in a goalie and get him lit up and you lose your confidence and then it's a tough way back. So this is a big year, no doubt about it, for Sebastian Cossa. I think he's been in the organization now for 3-4 years, and it's about time. He's got to have a really solid year with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and they're going to give him every opportunity to try and win a job. And if he's playing in Grand Rapids, they want him to win down there and really improve his game and his skills.
All right, we'll go to one more topic, and we'll hold a station break. George will have opportunities to turn it loose as well shortly. But this is the final year for Justin Abdelkader, with that contract of his. I think he's got $1.06 million left on a buyout. Tell me a little bit about Justin Abdelkader. Why did it not work out for the Red Wings? I know he's a tough guy. He looked good at the beginning. I love toughness and that sort of thing, but somehow, some way, it just didn't pan out for Justin Abdelkader in Motown.
Well, he had some injury problems, and I know he had a bad back, and a hockey player, it's hard to play with a bad back, And I always say it's not his fault that he's still getting paid. I mean, he was signed to a deal, and he accepted it, and this is the final year. I think the Red Wings, as you mentioned, Scott, are paying him. So, there's never going to be a player that's going to turn a contract down like that, and he didn't do it, so I can't fault him one bit, but. He's last of those guys that the Red Wings are still paying, I guess. And now it's time to move forward and really work on where this team is going to go. And it's still a challenge. I just think this year is going to be a challenge again. And the Red Wings, they're going to be in the same mix. They didn't make a big splash in the offseason with the free agency. And I don't think the free agent crop for the money that teams were spending on players. Would you really want to give up some of your youth like Danielson or Mazur or Cossa to get a 32-year-old player that maybe only has 1 or 2 years left? So I get it. Like I know a lot of the fans think, well, they should have made a splash, they should have made a deal, but sometimes your best deals are the one you don't make. And I really like our young guys, and I really like Danielson as well. I think down the road he's going to be a solid Red Wing. I like Carter Mazur. Fortunately, he's been hurt. But he put on some weight. I heard he put on some weight, some muscle, so that's good for him. And I'm just hoping that some of these young guys can come in from Grand Rapids and win a spot on the team.
All right, we're going to turn over to Candy Abeling for a station break. More to come with Kent Gall, the play-by-play announcer for the Detroit Red Wings, a very dear friend of mine. Glad to have him on Sports Wrap tonight here on Thursday night. Go ahead, Kent.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. And the foreword was written by the other co-host, Mr. George Eichhorn. Great job, gentlemen. Talks about media and how media has changed over Scott's 40 plus years in the business. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can find a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to sponsor a show or advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
And if you want to follow us, you can follow us at Tribune South on Twitter. That's at Tribune South on Twitter. So I don't know how often you get on Twitter, Kenny, but at Tribune South, look me up, and that's where you'll find us and all our other content as well. I saw a neat little picture of you on Instagram, and I had to bring this one up to you. That you actually had, you saw your grandson Gavin had a ball there, and you had it in your hand, and you said that you're going to take it to the office. How much do you appreciate being with family and being able to share these moments with your family as a Red Wings announcer? That's a job a lot of people in that area would love to have growing up as a kid. When George and I grew up listening to the Bruce Martins, the Bud Lynches, and now you're carrying the torch there, that a lot of people are thinking of you. You know, let me tell you, people still do listen to radio a lot. I once picked up your stuff actually in the Everglades off of 75 way back in the day. You can't do it. It's not easy. And if you're in the Everglades, let me tell you, once upon a time, signals do work, but they're not easy. But let's talk about family now. Forget about anything else, okay? Family. You take that little ball and you think of your son Gavin. You probably have a picture of him. When it's all said and done, and you're out there doing the game, you go to your office at Little Caesar, and then you have a grandson. How do you put all that into perspective?
Well, first and foremost, my grandson is like 26 years old. He's not like he's like 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, okay.
But the thing about my grandson and why I got the ball is because he took a job in Aberdeen, Maryland, as the stadium operation manager at Cal Ripken Park.
Well, did I blow that one? Maybe it was the number 8 at Cal Ripken Park that threw me off. Oh, now I'm losing it. Tell me I'm losing it.
No. So I'm proud of him because of the fact that he came up here at an earlier age, and I took him to the Joe.
Okay.
The day, and when he was smaller, and okay. He always told me, he calls me Pop. He goes, Pop, okay. I want to work in sports one day. And I took him up to the booth, and I had him do some notes back then a little bit, just to get him involved. And he finally got this job over at the minor league ballpark where the Aberdeen Ironbirds play. And we all went as a family to the game. His mom, his dad, some of our relatives, and we were all sitting together. And he came by and he gave me a baseball, and he goes, Pop, this is for you. And I said, well, I don't want this unless you sign it. So he ended up signing it, and I'm really proud of him, and I'm proud of his work ethic and how he got this job. He enjoys it a lot, and I think he wants to move up eventually in a major league position somewhere. But he's doing really good in Aberdeen right now, and so I'm going to keep that ball in my office, and I hope one day he makes it to the major leagues.
Then I'm going to say on air, I didn't blow it that bad, but I have a story similar to yours, though. Many years ago in Arizona, Bernie Harwell and I are sitting. Well, the Tigers are playing Arizona over, I think it was Banklund Ballpark at the time. I don't remember what it was, but Chase Field, whatever. It's over in Arizona. Ernie gives me these things. I actually have them in my studio here of chips, these taco chips in a bag. You give me, I don't want these things. They're not really worth anything. I don't want you to have them. And I've got this thing here where you can see that. I don't know if I have the autograph on the other side of the bag. I'll tell you what, Ernie, I'll make a deal with you. I'll take them under the following conditions. What's that? Pull out a Sharpie and sign them. You know how fast Bernie Harwell got that Sharpie out? That fast. Took them. Bingo. Oh, we always kid around about that. Now they're valuable. It's the most valuable piece of taco chips I've never eaten before. They're sitting in here in a Ziploc bag in my office, in my studio. Barry, and now because you brought your grandson into the picture, I get to mention that story. Thanks to you, my pal. Kenny Cal. Bingo! Way
There you
out,
go.
bang! Bring out Keith Olbermann. Oh, forget about him. He talks politics anyways.
Hey, George, George, you have an Ernie Harwell story at all, or?
Come on, George.
Well,
Come on,
one of my
George.
stories, yeah, with Ernie is we were doing a feature story on him, and my photographer, Glenn Hibbert, his name was, he also shot our wedding pictures. He and I were in the bowels of Tiger Stadium, and you know what, guys? I didn't realize how he was like a magnet. So he and Paul, this was after the game. He and Paul were back down there in the corridor, and Glenn was with me, and we were just trying to, and it was a beautiful picture, and I got it in my book. But the kids and the adults that are around him, surrounding him, and the look on a couple of the faces was just beautiful. I mean, that was something that I'll always treasure. This picture of he and Paul talking to the fans, and it was just this guy Glenn was a great photographer. So I mean, maybe not much of a story there, but no, he and I and Scott were very close. Obviously, Scott, it was like Uncle Ernie to you, Scott. And I know I never called him Uncle, but I mean, yeah, I always admired him as well.
Let me tell you, Ernie loved it when I called him Uncle Ernie. I call him. I have a story. I'll tell you, when I was working in Arizona, Kenny, I do get around a lot. I'm not the most stationary target. This guy stays in Motown, and I go everywhere. But I'll never forget the time when I'm living in Arizona, and I get into a jackpot here because now also we're dealing with 9/11. Okay.
Oh.
And this is I'm working for a radio station out there doing an auto racing show. Me doing auto racing. Forget hockey, okay? This auto racing. So, Uncle Ernie, I got a bit of a problem out here. He said, "Do you need money?" No, I'm okay with the money side, but I got a problem. So, what's the problem? I need you to come on the air because I need you to talk about because now we have nothing to talk about with motorsports because everything got shut down. So these other guys who are my co-hosts actually were New York Giants fans. And I'm going to tell you, when I put them on with Ernie Harwell, these guys look like, holy moly, they were in baseball heaven. Like, you know him? Oh, he's my uncle. He come out whenever I need him to. And these guys looked at me and said, "Oh, wonder how many other people you know." Stick around, brother. You never know who I know in this business. Because anybody that's been in this business, sports media, knows the longer you hang around, the more people you meet. I'm just glad that I've accumulated over 4.5 decades to be able to go out there and come up with some class people. Well, that was just fun. But Uncle Ernie bailed me out of a tough spot. But it was nothing to him. Oh, what's about 15, 30 minutes out with him? My kid, it's like, he didn't really matter, but it was just unbelievable in Arizona. Yeah, I mean, and that was a train wreck of a franchise back in the day when they stuck a team over in a basketball arena, which was, George, you were never there, but he was. We were both there. I think you've been out at that old arena. That was awful, wasn't it?
Well, there's one end there where you couldn't see the goal.
That's what I'm talking about.
They were obstructed view seats, and you couldn't even see. And actually, the Red Wings played they were the Coyotes back then when Jeremy Roenick was playing and Keith Tkachuk. And they actually had a pretty good team. We had some really good playoff series against the Phoenix Coyotes at the time.
Yeah, I had some issues with their PR guy because I told him, I wrote in the Detroit Monitor, sometimes PR guys don't like what you do. I ruffled a few feathers out in the desert. I said, I don't need to be playing in this pit. Basically, I wouldn't use those words. I'd be playing at the Arizona Memorial Coliseum where they could charge more money, where the Suns used to play. And then it was a better hockey arena. They didn't really kind of like it. I've only been to 2 Coyotes games. And of course, now we're the Coyotes. Well, they're in Utah, but they're an expansion team. This goes to show you hindsight was 2020. He's out of a job. They're out of a team. And we're all here talking about it. It's a beautiful thing. So, all right, well, since we'll take our act on the road again, Ken, one of my best memories with you was over at Miller Park when the Tigers were taking on the Milwaukee Brewers in Candy's hometown and taking a photo with you and Jim Price. You obviously talked about doing baseball occasionally. I know that was a bit of a transition for you, but how much did you like doing baseball? And talk about working with Jim Price. I've known Jim Price for a while before he passed, and one of the nicest guys you can ever meet. He really was unbelievable.
Well, the thing about Jim Price is I can understand why he was a catcher because he made me feel so comfortable in the booth. and he didn't know me from Adam, right? I walked in one day, and it's like, well, what are you doing here? Well, I'm calling the game with you, Jim. He's like, okay, let's do it, So I could see where if Denny McClain or Mickey Lolich had a problem and they were getting a little hot under the collar, he could come out there and settle them down, But no, I liked working with Jim. I thought he was a class act, and he really, him and I actually really got along together. I did 13 Tiger games over the years. And
Wow.
those games that I saw you in Milwaukee, those were Dan Dickerson had a family get together and he couldn't make it. It was the final trip of the season,
Right.
and I ended up calling those 3 games at the end of September and into October. So it was a lot of fun. And baseball's different, and you don't realize how good Dan Dickerson is until you step behind the mic and try to do what he does. And I'm telling you, it's hard. It really is. And I'm a hockey guy, and I'm used to talking a lot and filling time. And in baseball, you got to let the game breathe a little bit. And for a guy that talks a lot to try and back it down, and sometimes dead air is good air on radio in baseball, and you want to let the ambiance take control. So that was a little bit of a difficult situation at times, but it all worked out, and I enjoyed it. And as the more games I did, the more comfortable I was. And I think a lot of that comfort had to come because I was working with Jim Price.
Let me tell you something. I played catcher too, just so you know, back in the day. I enjoyed that position. Of course, that was the only one I was any good at because I was in the game at all times. What's so cool about spending that time with you and Jim is that's the place I got married to Candy. Right, Candy? Come on out for a minute. Yeah, you want to talk about going out there and having a whale of a time. Now you can show your face. You did when we were there. Tell how neat it was for us to be able to see the Tigers over at Miller Park, and then and you were taking that picture with Ken and I and Jim. That was pretty full circle, wasn't it?
That was cool. That was fun. Yes, always priceless to meet all the people that you've been in the media business for so long. So to meet some of these people, the stories that you talk to your significant other and they tell you stories. And then to get the names with the faces with the names, that's just priceless.
I mean, she's been around me a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes she has to be my PR person
Yeah.
because some of these people get in my way, and I'm not a very nice guy, but she's done a good job. But you know what, though, Kenny? That's just the way it is. When you're a competitive individual in sports media and you're hunting down contact, you're not going to make everybody happy. In our industry, when you have when you have a relentless work ethic, that's just the way it is, isn't it? Sometimes you have relentless work, and you don't want nobody getting in your way. You need to do what you got to do to make sure, because you have people to answer to, and you're also trying to maintain your place in the market to do what you have to do. You agree?
No, you're right about that. And I know George. He's been around a long time too, and he's seen a lot of media people, and sometimes it's not that easy to deal with different people in the media.
Personalities, man, personalities. We won't mention any names here, but there was one guy that I either love or hate him, and that was one of the attributes that Mr. Cameron had. God rest his soul. He died suddenly, as you guys know, a year or two ago. But he was always in your face kind of thing, and he is difficult at times because there are things that you don't want to be associated with, for example. And certain people he didn't like or whatever, but you try to keep a little bit of distance there because Ron was that kind of person, so you don't want to be falling into that trap of being labeled that you're also screaming for this guy's head or that guy's head. One of the things I remember most about you, Ken, was the way you stepped forward in other paths that you and I have crossed. A lot of people don't know this, but Ken received a very prestigious award about a year ago, Scott, when he won the Tony Kubek Award from the Polish American Sports Hall of Fame, and which was a great. Ken, I think you're only our third recipient of that award, and talk about that because you talk about baseball, and my God, Tony Kubek, we grew up with him. Remember Scott and Ken?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, working alongside Joe Garagiola, and before that with Kurt Gowdy, and Tony is Polish, and so the Polish Hall of Fame here in Troy, Michigan, they named that award the Tony Kubek Award, and Ken, I was just absolutely delighted when they announced that you were going to win the third one of that.
Well, yeah, that was an amazing award to get. I'm very honored to receive it. And the other one that I hold dear to my heart is the Ty Tyson Award. And I got
Oh
that
yeah.
in 2006 with the Detroit Sports, at the time, Sports Broadcasters
Oh yeah.
Association. So that means a lot to me too. Got a nice plaque for that. But I never talked to Tony Kubek before in my life, and wouldn't you know it, he calls me up. I guess some of the directors gave him my number, and he calls me up and he goes, "Hey Ken, this is Tony Kubek." I'm like, "Who? Tony Kubek's calling
Right.
me?" He's like, "Yeah, I just want to say," he goes, "I never met you before, but," he goes, "I want to congratulate you on your award," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, so I ended up having a good hour-long conversation with him, and we talked a lot
Wow.
about his broadcasting career and his days as a Yankee and as a major league ball player. So that was pretty cool. Like to be able to win an award and actually talk to the person that the award is for and
Yeah.
from. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was really quite the honor. And he was a great guy, and I can see why he was pretty good in the broadcast field too, because he was an excellent communicator.
Hey, Joshua George, just to let you know, you are live here with Detroit Red Wings radio play-by-play announcer Ken Kal. Ken's been in it a long time. So and Joshua Dorr is a Florida Panthers guy, and the Panthers have won back-to-back Stanley Cup champs. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win a third one the way they're playing. I can't. To me, they've won two, and unless anybody can go out there and challenge them for a third, they would be my odds-on favorite. So Joshua, just so you know, our special guest tonight is Ken Kal, the play-by-play radio voice of the Detroit Red Wings. Just thought I'd mention it. Joshua is a regular here in the chat room. Just want to make him aware, and he has a few other friends that follow the show as well. So there you go, Josh. You want to put in any other comments? Great, but just want to acknowledge it. He's very loyal to the program. So, all right, George, continue your questions. I'll have a few more. But I need a break, so you can continue.
Scott and I and some of the other guests that he's had on this hockey show, Kenny, we talked a little bit about Gerard Gallant. I mean, I was really never close to him as far as media goes or talking to him, but somebody made an interesting comparison, like the Billy Martin thing, where, he comes in there in a year or two, he does what he wants to, but then unfortunately he's got to move on. I mean, what do you think about Gallant? I mean, he's got, a coaching background that, is short string, I guess. Your thoughts on him as a coach?
Well, you can't question his ability to rally his players from once he's hired to greatness. I mean, he gets his players playing for him, and they're usually pretty good for a couple of years, and then, as you mentioned, George, after that, I don't know what happens if if it's a personality clash with management or what have you. But in several situations, he was let go. And you start scratching your head and you say, well, why would that happen? Because he was such a good coach and he had some winning seasons. He went to the Rangers. He was really good there. The Panthers had him for a while. He was good there. Went out to Vegas, and in their first year, took him to the Stanley Cup final.
Right.
And it's hard to believe. And I've met Gerard Gallant before. He's really a good guy. He can, he's tough on his players. You got to play for him. But as far as, I've met him when he was a player and I was a reporter in Ann Arbor, and I met him doing this job with the Red Wings, and he's always been really cordial to me. And I hope one day he gets another crack, another kick at the can, because I think if there's any team that needs instant help and instant success, he can do that, and he's done it before, and it's proven.
Yeah. And then one more I got that's been at the top of my mind, Scott and Kenny. Talk to us about the international competition. The NHL. We were young then, but the Canada Cup and the Olympics. And now what they tried last year with postponing the All-Star game and having a competition like that. I know it's got its good points in that, but man, oh man, if you lose a player like some teams did through an injury in that situation, what are your thoughts about that in the middle of the season, like in international?
Well, George, you're right about that. And it wasn't just one or two guys. There was a handful of players, and even though Dylan Larkin didn't say it or nobody said anything, I don't think he was 100% when he came back either. They put so much energy and effort, and it was like a short Stanley Cup final for those guys, and they played with everything that they had. And then when you come back off of that, obviously, if you're not 100%, there's going to be a lull. and that's not going to help your team at all because, at that
Right,
part of
right.
the season, you're in a playoff push. And so I think I really like it. I think the players really like it. They like the international competition. And a lot of the guys, especially overseas, love to compete for like an Olympic championship or some type of international championship. My idea would be play it at the beginning of the season, like before you even start, or play it after the season and have a summer tournament where we're after the Stanley Cup and everything,
Right.
then you play it because you're right. If I'm an owner,
Yeah.
if I'm Chris Ilitch and I've got my star players playing over there, I want to win. And when you come back and you're banged up and beat up, and Kachuk was banged up, both of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all these guys were injured when they came back, and it just doesn't help your team.
Yeah.
No
But
question.
I like the competition. I think if you asked
Yeah, the
anybody who
timing.
watched that, you
Oh.
loved it. It was great hockey. It really was.
Well, that Four Nations face-off made the NBA look worse than it already is, and it's bad because of load management. Think about it. Matthew Tkachuk is going to miss a substantial amount of time. The Florida Panthers overcame it because they had a lot of good players, and he did come back a little bit, but they were lucky that they had as much depth as they could to get that second Stanley Cup. So there's no question you make a lot of points, but the Four Nations face-off makes the NBA look awfully, awfully bad for sure.
Yeah.
And I love
Sure
the
does.
comparison between Billy Martin and Gerard Gallant. So let's play a little game here. Okay. The game we're gonna play is we're gonna compare and contrast. Okay. A battle on the ice between Steve Yzerman and Phil Esposito. Okay. And here's what we're gonna do. We're talking about through the years. They never played each other. We don't play these computer video games how they would really play. But the games played, the tail of the tape. Steve Yzerman played 1,514 games. Phil Esposito 1,282. Stevie got 3 Stanley Cups. Phil got 2. Career goals 692 for Yzerman, 1,590 for Esposito, and 1 Hart Trophy for Yzerman and 2 for Esposito. Now, I should point out that Phil Esposito had 76 goals in 78 games one year, which to me is one of the most unbelievable feats in hockey to begin with. But let's just size these two guys up. George, you and I aren't going to participate in this exercise. I want to get it from Ken.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts when you compare and contrast these two guys?
Well, I think they're two different players. To be honest with you, I mean, Steve started his career and he was a high offensive player, a high output offensive player, and then didn't win anything. And then he Scotty talked to him, became a pretty solid defensive player and kind of gave up on the offense, and that's what it took to win. Phil was always a goal scorer, and I think anytime you have Bobby Orr on the ice with you and McKenzie and Hodge and Johnny Busick, those guys were just as good as the Red Wing players when we had Fedorov and Shanahan and everybody else. So I think when you compare teams like the 72 Bruins and 97 Stanley Cup champ Detroit Red Wings, pretty much even. Like there's a lot of superstars on both of those two teams. There's the comparison you can make between Orr and Lidstrom, right? And a lot of people say Lidstrom was better. A lot of people say Orr was better. But, both teams had great players. And the thing about Phil is he could score anywhere on the ice. I mean, and he was a big player.
Yeah.
He was big and he was strong and it was hard to move out in front of the net. And back then, if you stood in front of the net, you paid the price. I mean, you got chopped down and there were no penalties called back in the day. And Steve was just a different player. Not only could he score, he was a great playmaker as well. I'm not so sure if Phil was gifted as a playmaker, but he had other guys on his team to set him up. He knew where to be on the ice to score goals. So it's tough. It's a tough comparison. It really is. But it's hard to give the edge to anybody. But I think all around, I'd have to give the edge to Stevie. I think he was the better all around player.
I'm going to put you on the spot again because I love doing this to cast, especially the ones that I really, really know. So does Wayne Gretzky get as many goals playing in the original 6, original 12 era as he's getting in the league that, in my opinion, is way watered down with a whole lot more teams, and you don't see as much because I guarantee you one book they didn't make during the later era, Blood on the Ice. I don't know where that's at in my bookcase, but they made that Blood on the Ice many years ago, and they're making it now with the way they're playing hockey. But does Wayne Gretzky become the all-time leading scorer in the old NHL? or any
What?
does he sniff anything close to the
Dude,
Howe.
you know what, Scott and George, two different eras. Like it's
Right.
amazing. It's two different. But I will say this, and I always dodge this question because I always say Mario Lemieux would have scored over 1,000 goals in the National Hockey League if he didn't come down with the cancer. And he only
Right.
played he played less than 1,000 games, and he scored 600 and some goals or whatever it was. And I still say that if he played a long career like a normal superstar player,
Right.
he would have scored 1,000, more than 1,000 goals. He was that dynamic. I mean, he would have more goals than Wayne Gretzky. I mean, in my opinion, the guy was a scoring machine. He was big and strong. He could skate, and he had that knack of putting the puck in the net. And nothing against Wayne Gretzky. And to answer your question, I don't think he'd score as many goals in the original six. But he'd still be a really good player, and he'd still be an offensive threat.
Well, that's a common answer I get from everybody. I'm not knocking Gretzky either, but if you see a team 18 times, it hurts after a while. They know what you can do. But, the Gordie Howe hat trick was a big thing back then when you got busted up and you saw each other 9 billion times. Anybody that's got to look at Major League Baseball until you saw each team 18 times until they made it 12. At what point do you not know anything about the other team that, back then it hurt. Now things are much different with the North American players, and it's not as physical as it used to be. But I think we also realize that when you put it all in its proper perspective, why do you think they have those physical hockey games in North America and they don't do it over the world? Because they don't allow physical play overseas, as I understand it. But that's why the Four Nations is played out this way. It's, from what I've been told, it's a different animal. But I don't want to get too far off point with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm not saying that Gretzky wouldn't have scored, 500, 600 goals, but he wouldn't have come close to, I think, Howe's record what he ended up doing with everybody beating the daylights out of him. Can you imagine Dave Schultz pounding away over at Wayne Gretzky? What about Brian Bugsy Watson taking a crack at him? And the list goes on and on. And those are names that I've enjoyed being from the Detroit area, because during the Dead Wings era, the only thing we had to look forward to was when Detroit and Philadelphia played, because you had the two most penalized teams. It was going to be fun and physical. We may have played bad, but we fought hard. I mean, it is. It was entertaining hockey.
Back in the day, though, players had to protect themselves, and when Gretzky played, and like a lot of the offensive gifted players, they had policemen that surrounded them, And that's not to say like Montreal had Beliveau and Richard, but they also had, John Ferguson. He was like their policeman too. And, I just think you're right. I think it was a lot more physical back in the day, and you had to earn your spot on the ice. But I still think Wayne was very, think about his assists, right? I mean, what has he got, like 2,000 assists or something like that in his career? I don't know close to it or something like that. But like, he was a great setup man. So can you imagine if him and Howe were on the same team? He'd be setting Gordie might have scored 1,000 goals. So you got to look at it that way too. He was really a gifted, talented player.
Yeah, Gordie Howe would have gotten in all the fights in Gretzky, and he would have protected Gretzky as well. Gordie wasn't afraid to mix it up. We all know that. Know that. I have a picture over at the Silverdome. I think you probably see it in the book. Look it up in the book, where I have my shoulder in a sling, and Gordie Howe was elbowing me at the Silverdome, and Bob Reynolds was in the background, and Eichhorn back there, and my jaw. And that book that you have, look at it. We got Muhammad Ali took a shot at this jaw, albeit without the white stuff on it. And Gordie Howe, I got another picture of Gordie Howe without the sling. But I'm going to tell you something. When you look at that book, and after this conversation, you'll know where I'm coming from. Wayne Gretzky probably, and again, they idolized each other. Why went 99 versus 9? I get it. So it's not that they didn't have mutual respect for each other to begin with. But the eras are, like you say, so different, but much more physical than they were. And I just don't think you get as many goals with that amount of familiarity. I'm not downplaying the significance of one player better than the other, because you're right. John Ferguson, as I remember it, he was definitely a physical specimen out there, and the list goes on. You have, and of course, over the years, physicality that we've seen in Detroit with the Darren McCartys and
Probert and
Bob Probert. But I don't want to get into all that, get too far off topic. but that's just what you have. How you, what Kenny's talking about is a policeman on the ice protect these guys. Is really what you're doing, and that's. But back in the day, you had to defend yourself. So let's bring this up a little bit, where the Red Wings are bringing back the Hockeytown Center Cafe logo in 2025 for their 100-year celebration. Do you like the idea?
Yeah, I mean, I like the logo. As a matter of fact, I got it pasted all over the place. I got a folder here that I brought down in case I needed it, but there it is, right there.
Yeah,
There you go.
I
love
like
that.
it.
It's great.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with the design, I looked at it and I go like, wow, that's pretty cool. And you know, I'm really looking forward to this year because, I mean, like all you guys, I go way back to the Olympia days, and you know, in the '60s, where you know the Red Wings. You know, I mean, I watched them on television when they were on, and listened to
Yeah.
Bruce and Bud on the radio. But there's so many great memories that go all the way back to when they first started in 1927. And this is a year that we're gonna tell the fans the story of the Detroit Red Wings, and we're going to bring back players, and we're going to bring back different people from different eras to for the fans, so that they can enjoy and tell stories and everything else. So I'm really looking forward to this 100 years of Detroit Red Wings hockey. It'll be a nice celebration all year long.
Oh gosh, yes.
Well, it took one guy like Scotty Bowman to break that drought. What was it like working with Scotty Bowman? I mean, to me, I was thankful on my birthday, believe it or not, to get a picture of him over in Tampa. It was neat to be able to have one of him. I wish I would have gotten one of Don Shula. Scotty Bowman isn't bad, knowing how many Stanley Cups he ended up winning. But Scotty Bowman, my God, I can't even count how many cups he ended up winning. But what was it like for you to work with him on a daily basis?
Well, you never knew where he's coming from a daily basis. Like sometime he'll be your greatest friend, and the next day he doesn't even know who you are. So
really,
it just yeah, every day is a different day with Scotty Bowman. You never knew what he was going to do. But I will say this: he was a great coach, you know, and he knew, he adapted with change and over time. And I think that's what really helped him out as far as winning from decade to decade. He always had some really good teams, whether it would be in Montreal or St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Detroit. But he knew what buttons to push and how to get players motivated. And, you know, I mean, out of all the coaches that I've known, you know, obviously he was the best.
I'll never forget, you know, Kenny and Scott, real quick. After the game, I don't know if you probably remember this, Ken. He wanted to talk to either the broadcasters or the writers separately. He did not want them both. But you know, the beat guys were in the room together, and then the radio guys, or vice versa. And I never forget coming in there one day, and I had a microphone in my hand, and he looks at me. He said, "Are you print or are you broadcast?" And I said, "Well, I'm both." He laughed. He just chuckled and said, "Okay, you can stay." I mean, that was Scotty Bowman. He had those rules, you know, who he was going to talk to, what group of writers and reporters. I mean, he, like you said, you didn't know from day to day where he was going to be.
Yeah, he always played games with, you know, head games with everybody. And, you know, we always hear about the time that he painted the locker room before game one of the playoffs. I can't remember what team it was. And they complained because all the paint fumes that were in there, and, you know, they couldn't breathe. And, you know, he's denying it and saying it was a building that, you know, wanted to put the paint job in. And, you know, everyone thinks it was Scotty. And so, yeah, I mean, he did a lot of those things.
Yeah.
To try and get the upper edge. And you know what? He was from the old school. So all those old school guys tried to do something to get the other team off and try to have that little bit of an edge that might make a difference. And that was Scotty Bowman.
Yeah, you think Scotty Bowman, an interesting bird. When you're young, working with Don Shula, I tell you, I learned some lessons pretty quick from him. But Coach Shula was pretty good to me. I'll tell you an interesting story. Many years ago, I was playing in a soccer game here on the practice fields over at Lockhart Stadium, where the Fort Lauderdale Strikers used to play. I was still covering the Miami Dolphins at training camp, and I injured my ankle, and it injured it bad to a point where I was in a, or actually was in a, what do you call it, a ankle brace or whatever. Well, no, it wasn't a boot back then. You know, an ace bandage. We've come a long way since back then. I mean, we're talking 80s time now, George. So I have to get out to training camp, and it's really raining over at it was called Biscayne College, and moved to St. Thomas University where they were training. So I ended up going there with another guy, Coach Shula. I mean, he got to like me after a while. I was just young, raw, like celery, carrots, not even cooked. So he says to me, because he got to like me after a while, you think I should cut you or put you on injured reserve? That's what he says directly, right in front of this other guy. I said, Coach, to be honest with you, I'd rather you just put me on injured reserve. I'm still part of the team. And then he smiled at me. It was just funny. So, but that goes back to what Bowman said.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I have a few other things I'll say. Thanks for staying with me. A few more
Sure.
want to get out here. Tensions obviously have been high about that 9-year playoff drought. A little bit longer. We're coming off of 25 years where they ended up getting in all the time. Do you think this is the year that Steve Yzerman does get the grill off his back because you have a very impatient fan base? He's alluded that they didn't make any splash moves during the offseason, although there's so little time maybe to add another player or two if they want to. But what are we looking like this year?
Well, they added depth in some areas. They just signed Travis Hamonic. He's a veteran defenseman that's, I think, 32 years old, something like that. And he'll add depth to the blue line. Bernard Docker is another player that came in that they signed, and he's more of a defensive-minded defenseman. He's not that old. He's like kind of in his prime, so he's back there and adding some depth on the blue line as well. I think the Wings, with Edvinsson having a really good year last year, and Mo Seider's been terrific since he came in. Sherratt, he's been pretty steady back there too. They've got veteran players now back on the blue line. It's going to help them out, who know how to play, who've been in different situations. Up front, I like what I saw from Marco Kasper. I hope he doesn't have the sophomore jinx, and I hope he has a terrific year. He had almost 20 goals last year, and maybe he'll score more this year. Lucas Raymond continues to improve. Dylan Larkin's been the top scorer for many years now for Detroit. So, Patrick Kane, he can be explosive, good on the power play. Alex DeBrincat the same way. So they got guys up front that can score. Again, special teams is big in the NHL. Power play's been great. Penalty kill has to get better. But again, the way I handicap the division is the teams up top aren't going anywhere. Toronto's still going to be good. Florida's going to be good. They played a lot of hockey, the Panthers. I mean, you mentioned 2 Stanley Cups, but they've been to the finals 3 straight years in a row. To go to the finals 4 straight years, that's going to be tough. Not saying they can't do it, but man, that's a lot of hockey played over 3 years. So they could slip a little bit. They'll still make the playoffs, but they're still going to be a dynamic team, but they just might not win as many games. But Tampa Bay's good.
Right.
So the top 3 teams in the division are going to make it. I think Boston's going to slip a little bit. And so the Red Wings are right there with 7 or 8 other teams like they have been over the last 2 seasons. And it all comes down to, I think March has been a killer month for Detroit. The last 2 years, that's what really caused issues for them. They didn't have good months of March. They've got to have a good March, but they just have to play more consistent hockey. But in the end, I think they're just as good as the other teams that are trying to get to a wild card spot, So I like Todd McClellan as a head coach. I think as much as I like Newsy Lalone, Derek Lalone, I don't think the team was going further with them, and that they had to make the move at Christmas time, which is something that's rare. But I liked Todd McClellan when he came in. He seemed to jumpstart the team. Had some injury issues with some players, and that always doesn't help. But I think with a year of Todd McClellan behind the bench, his pedigree is he knows how to win. He knows how to get the best from his players. So I'm hoping that that will happen this year.
Yeah, what happened in Florida, though, with all due respect, Bill Zito's doing a great job with the Panthers. And again, I'm not partial to any team. I'm just objective right across the board, like any journalist should be. But they signed a lot of their core players, and some of them took less money to stay in Sunrise. And then they got a bargain basement. Jeff Petrie just went chasing for a ring. So we'll see. I agree. They played a lot of hockey. But, as we've proven so many times, whether you win the division title or not, it has nothing to do with it. President's trophies don't mean a lot either. As long as you get in the tournament, it really doesn't make any difference. You always saw the Red Wings made it a lot of years with Ken Holland, making the right moves at the right times with Mike Ilitch, for sure. Let's have a little bit of fun with this one. It really will be kind of weird, though, not seeing John Keating and Trevor Thompson around anymore, won't it? I mean, number one, Thompson is a brother to me. He is. Trevor Thompson is one of the nicest guys. Every time I get sick, which seems like it's all the time, anyways, he's always checking up on me to make sure it's okay. I got to know John Keating a little bit last year when the Tigers were taking the Miami Marlins. Good guy. What's it going to be like this year without both of those two individuals around?
I don't know. And to be honest with you, I'm on the radio side, so I don't really know what happens on the TV side. You know, I travel with Trevor and sometimes with John Keating, and that's about the extent of it because I never watch a broadcast. Obviously, I'm on the radio side, but I thought Trevor Thompson did a really good job. He was, you know, he comes from a hockey background, and you know, I'll miss him around. He was a really good guy.
Right.
But in the broadcast business, things change, you know, and you know, you have to move forward. I think Daniela Bruce did a pretty good job when she was on radio. She is transitioned well, I think, with the Tigers and what she does, and I believe she's going to move over to the Red Wings side and be what Trevor did when he was with the Red Wings. So, you know, I think she's really done a really good job too. So you hate seeing people not with the organization anymore, but I'm sure everything will work out for Trevor in the long run. But I'll miss him around.
Yeah, Daniela Bruce. So she worked on the radio side with you? I didn't know that. Of course, I'm not up there.
Yeah, she worked with the Tigers on the radio side and then the Red Wings and then moved over to the television side this year.
Well, I didn't know that. Okay, well, it's good to know. Of course, I don't live there. I take the information from you guys. But one guy you do know a lot about is a guy that I have a lot of respect and love for, Paul Woods. Talk about a guy that's been around forever. There's not a bad word to describe Paul Woods. This guy is one of the nicest guys I've ever seen, and you've had the privilege and opportunity to work with Paul. What are your best thoughts about Paul Woods?
Well, he's a walking encyclopedia, and I always say, George and Scott, that I'm the kind of guy that when I was in high school and I studied for a test, I was the guy that walked out of the room and couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember a question. You know, you always get those guys. Hey, number 8, you know, was it true or false or what? And I was the guy that said, I don't even know. The difference is Paul Woods remembers everything, and he can tell you, you know, all 4 lines on every team in the NHL, and he's just a wealth of knowledge and knows a lot about the game. And just being with him for 29 years now, going on my 30th year, I've learned so much just about the game of hockey that I didn't know when I first started just by being around him. And you know what's amazing too is sometimes at the end of the game, we'll be walking to the bus and, you know, he might say something like, hey, you know, so-and-so's not playing very well. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they sent him down to the minors, or, you know what, there's got to be a trade. Something's got to happen, you know. And sure enough, it's like he knows from what he sees, and, you know, a player will be sent down, or there'll be a trade made, or there'll be a coach that moves on. So like, he's just a wealth of knowledge. He's got a dry sense of humor, and it's really been a pleasure for me to be able to work with him over the years.
If I recall correctly, they obtained him from the Montreal Canadiens for next to nothing, if I remember right. And then wasn't he on the same line as Henry Boucher, if I remember right? I'm
not sure about that. I know he played with Dale McCourt, and I think Billy Lahead when they went to the Stanley Cup playoffs that one year.
I'll have to research that. But
The
guy's incredible. And then you have another couple of people I can't leave out here. Is Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond. We all know Mickey's been around there forever. I'll bet not too many people will know that Mickey Redmond's first 50 goal came against Ron Lowe with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I remember watching. Goalie. Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. Alzheimer's hasn't gotten me that bad, although it will eventually, but it did not catch me in a low moment bad analogy, Scott. You know better than that. Burn off the bear with that low analogy. But that's what Mickey Redmond. What's it been like to work with Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond?
Good guys. And again, I don't really see them that much because they're on their own program doing the television. We do travel together, and we do get out from time to time. Mickey's Mickey. I mean, fun to be around, and you know, he never seems to have a bad day. And Kenny's just a great announcer. He's just you know, the television broadcast is always tops in the National Hockey League, and it's just because both of those guys are really good at what they do. You know, Ken Daniels, he's done national games. He's you know, well spoken. He knows the game inside and out, and a terrific broadcaster. and Mickey tells it like it is, you know, and the support staff too. When Ozzy comes in and Larry Murphy, they all seem to work together. So they're very good on the TV side.
And you're right about the national thing. People forget, may not know that both of those guys used to work for Hockey Night in Canada, Redmond and Daniels. Yeah, yeah. And then of course we lost the great Dave Strader. That was very unfortunate losing him. Another great Red Wing announcer from the previous years. I mean,
you know what's amazing is this year we're celebrating 100 years of Detroit Red Wings hockey. And over the 100 years, there's only been 5 full-time radio play-by-play voices for the Red Wings.
Incredible.
In the 30s, there was a guy named Bill Sutherland, and then Bud Lynch came along. I'm just talking radio, not television.
Yeah,
and then there was a guy by the name of Al Nagler in the late 50s that did it. And then there was Bud again, Bruce Martin, and myself. And think about that. One franchise, 100 years, only 5 announcers on radio, full-time play-by-play, not guys that fill in, just full-time play-by-play guys. That's amazing.
So you bring that up. Okay, that's an interesting point. How do you feel being among 5 announcers for the club over 100? I'm glad you set me going on this one. Yeah. 1 of 5 in 100 years. I'm not that good at math, okay, but that's pretty darn good.
Think about it. I don't know. Radio came in the late 20s, I think, but I don't know if the games were on the radio. But I know in the 30s they were. But yeah, I mean, to be 1 of 5, that's pretty outstanding. And between Bruce Martin, who was here for 31 years, this will be my 30th. So for over a half a century, there has been only 2 radio guys. So it's just amazing. And you know, I'm entering my 30th year this year, and I can remember as a kid, I was 9 or 10 years old, and I'm watching Bruce and Bud on TV, and then when I took over, I'm going like, wow, 31 years for Bruce Martin. That's something. I mean, that's a long time. And now here I am going into my 30th year, and I'm going like, it just seemed like I got hired in. I mean, time flies. It's just amazing. Like, there's been 2 generations of people that, you know, listen. I mean, just think about it. If a guy was born in 1995, he's 30 years old already.
So how long do you think you can keep doing this for?
I don't know. I go year by year. I always joke around. I don't have a contract. So what I do is I show up in Traverse City every year. And if they send me, I pray that they don't send me home. If they don't send me home, then I'm there for another year. So
yeah, that would hold your breath.
Stay as long as you want.
Let me point out something earlier this week, and it's my Uncle Bob Stroll would be proud if he had an opportunity to watch this. Unfortunately, on Tuesday, he passed away at the age of 80, 3 weeks shy of his 81st birthday. And he's a longtime Red Wing fan. Rest in peace, Uncle Bob. But I'm sure you'd really be enjoying this broadcast up in heaven. He will be laid to rest tomorrow in Birmingham, Michigan at Clover Hill Park Cemetery. But I thought I'd mention it anyways. My father and him used to have season tickets, and my mom and my Aunt Judy over at Olympia Stadium carried them over to Joe Louis. Of course, they probably haven't sniffed anything over at Little Caesars, nor do they probably care at this point because they're too old. Of course, Bob never will. Bad joke, but it really isn't. But they're longtime Red Wing fans as well. So rest in peace, Bob. I figured you'd like to have this show before you go 6 feet under. But I just want to let everybody know that, you know, we've been paying tribute to him all week. I wasn't able to get to the funeral tomorrow because of my medical situation being what it is, but I'll certainly watch it stream. But at least I feel in my sense that, you know, you have to take care of yourself before you can be clear to travel or domestically, and I'm not ready to do it yet. But this is a perfect opportunity with timing with you, Kenny, to come on, not only to talk about hockey during a time of the year where a lot of people were trying to keep things interesting and keep hockey in the news, but at a time when Sergei Fedorov's number is actually being retired. It's just surreal how sometimes timing has a way of playing itself out, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, it's great because we're celebrating 100 years of Red Wing hockey, and I can't think of anybody more well-deserving than Sergei Fedorov to have his number 91 retired.
Yeah,
well, I think down the line it's going to be Datsuk and Zetterberg, hopefully too. We'll see that honor, but of course they're much younger than Sergei.
I'm hoping Chris Osgood gets his number retired too.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too.
And he should be in the Hall of Fame as well. He won 401 games. I mean, anytime you win 400 games in the NHL, there's only been 13 or 14 goalies that have done that. you should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
agree.
well, Chris Osgood not being in the Hall of Fame reminds me of my good friend Don Mattingly not being in there either. He should be in there, and I've lobbied for Don, but Chris Osgood should be there without a doubt. And 400 win, it's like telling me that a guy that wins over 300 wins in baseball is pitching isn't going to get in. That just doesn't make sense. Hopefully, you're right. At some point, I'll tell you if it makes you feel any better. Alexander Mogilny got in finally, and maybe Chris Osgood. There might be a little bit of hope for him. Maybe sometimes it takes a little longer for some guys to get in, but I totally agree. Osgood. The other ones, I don't know. We'll play it out down the road. Should we have the opportunity to do this again down the road? It's just been fun. So,
thank you.
With that said, George, have any other questions you want to ask our good pal Ken Cal?
Well, I don't. Oh, I know. There's one thing is the why does hockey play so many exhibition games now? You see, the NBA is cut back, the NFL is cut back on their preseason, but baseball and the NHL still have so many preseason games. Why is that?
Well, that's a good point, George, because next year it's going to change with the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And next year, I believe the teams are going to be playing 84 regular season games and only 4 preseason games. So right now, most teams are playing 7 or 8. That's going to cut back. And maybe the season will start a little bit sooner too. But that's the talk right now, is that there's going to be less preseason games and 2 more regular season games. So it'll be 84.
Thank you for the timely news. Appreciate it.
Good question.
Good having you on tonight. Yes, sir.
We had a lot of fun. All right, Katie, come on for another station break. She's going to give you a preview of what's ahead on Fire Up, and then we're going to sign out and turn it over to Candy. Ken, it's been a pleasure having you on, but we're not done yet. Also, if you do get on Twitter at some point or other, please write down at Tribune South. That's so you'll be able to find me that way. And of course, you have my other contact information. We had Tom Gage on. Please be joining back-to-back weeks with Tom Gage and now Ken Cal. It's been a treat the last 2 weeks, and I'm having a blast. And again, I put this shirt here in this studio because I knew you were coming out. So, I had to prepare for it. And when I saw that picture on Instagram with you, this red was coming out of the closet. All right, Katie, come on for station break and a preview for Fire Up. Candy will come on for a station break. But meanwhile, when you go ahead and see it at the bottom of it, you'll see it on our ticker as well. But George, in the meantime, while she comes on, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know about your book a little bit?
Yeah. I authored a book, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, which features many of the same names that Ken Cal talked about tonight, including himself. And the book is available on Amazon. At the end of my column, there's always a link down there that you could hit if you want to purchase the book from Amazon. And I write for the South Florida Tribune along with the Detroit Monitor. And I enjoy this program like I do all the great work that Candy and Scott do behind the scenes here. Great to be part of them. If you want to try to reach me, easiest way is gicorn@yahoo.com or on Twitter, SandGSports99. And also I'm very active on LinkedIn and a little bit more on X, whatever that thing is called, Twitter. So anyways, been great being on the show tonight, guys. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and like I said before, Ken, anytime we could go ahead and share memories like we're able to do it like this, it's just surreal. Is there anything that as we look back at your career that you want to reflect on as probably some of your highest points in your career? That's probably the one thing I forgot to mention.
Just I guess my first Red Wing game I ever did was a highlight. All the Stanley Cups. Just being a part of a great organization and just thankful for the opportunity to do something I always wanted to do. And, it's just every day is a great day when you're broadcasting an NHL game.
Yeah.
What's amazing about it is the fact that, you're doing an original 6 team. I think that one thing I can always say about the original 6 is it better when an original 6 team is actually in the playoffs, because I know we saw 4 of them not in this year, and the NHL to me is a league where you really definitely need one. It's a better, because I know the Red Wings tend to get on, more national TV games being original 6 team, and that's a reputation. Is the league better off when the Red Wings are that good?
I think so. I think it's like the Yankees, right? When the Yankees are in, everybody likes it. Maybe not everybody, but same thing with the Red Wings. When when they're winning, they draw an audience, and it's not only in Detroit; it's everywhere around the NHL.
Okay, all right. Now
Very
Candy's
true.
on for that final station break and preview with Fire Up. Go ahead, Candy.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and George Eichhorn wrote the foreword as well. Great book, you two. If you want to get your copy today, it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can find a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. If you want to advertise, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. As far as Fire Up coming up, we will be talking a lot about the NFL and previewing, since this is the last weekend before we go live. So we're going to talk a lot of NFL, and we'll talk a little baseball too. So
All
That's
right. Well,
All
that concludes this edition of Sports Wrap. I want to thank Ken Cal as our special guest for joining us. George Eichhorn setting it up. So on behalf of Ken Cal and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Sports Wrap. And Ken, look forward to talking to you soon, following each other on social media, and look forward to seeing you the next time. It will be without this white stuff. How does that sound? But tonight you got to see the age version. It's okay. You see me just about every way. Why not put this out there? But at least you can say I am red and white, even if it matches the facial hair, right?
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott, and thanks, George.
Thank you
for
very
having me on.
much.
you're
God
very
bless.
welcome.
Have a good night, Ken. Thanks for joining us.
Night.
Good night.